Hey Netrunners, it's me again. I'm trying out a different microphone this time, so hopefully this one's a little bit less of a potato. So I guess probably more like a rutabaga? I don't know. Anyway, here we are again for episode 5 of Runners in Space! Okay, so first off, we've got two Anarch cards that are very interesting and very important because they are the final pieces of the Tag Me puzzle that we've been getting little trickles of over the past couple months. So let's start with Mars is for Martians. This is a zero-cost event, priority, 1 influence. Draw a card for every installed clan resource you have, and gain a credit for each tag you have. So while so far we've seen rewards for going Tag Me in the form of multi-access and damage prevention, and those are nice and all, but this is an economy reward for going Tag Me, and that's super important. Although, to be honest, the draw a card for every installed clan thing might as well not even be there. Like, there's only, so far at least, there's only 3 clan resources. One of them you hold in your hand until you're ready to use it, and it doesn't really, actually that doesn't matter, because if you're going full Tag Me, they're all resources, they can all be blown up, and this can only be played as your first click anyway, so yeah, the drawing a card for clan resources is like almost irrelevant to the card. It doesn't really amount to much. The gain 1 for each tag you have, however, definitely comes into play. So if you're running a siphony type of deck, which is, the most typical thing you're going to do to go full Tag Me in Anarch is just run an Anarch Siphon deck, then this really helps you not run out of gas. Because if you've ever tried to run a full-on Tag Me Siphon Anarch deck that relies on Siphon as your primary form of economy, then you know that you have to go super frigging hard on siphoning the shit out of your opponent as many times as humanly possible. If you let your foot off the gas and your opponent is allowed to stabilize, even just moderately so, then that siphon money runs out real quick and your plan kind of craps out. So this can be really helpful once you have like 6, 8 tags, whatever, to just be a free shot in the arm econ boost to help you just not peter out once the corp gets a few pieces of ice that can actually manage to res. This is also really important because one of the big weaknesses of Tag Me, if you're playing against NBN, is closed accounts, because you can put down Plascrete or whatever and be safe from being killed, but if you get closed accounts, you're kind of shit out of luck. This is a zero-cost, get you a buttload of money that is very good at countering one of Tag Me's biggest weaknesses in that particular setup. So it counters closed accounts, it helps you not run out of gas. It's really good just in a vacuum by itself. But obviously, one of the things this is really great at comboing with is negating the downside of counter surveillance. Because remember, counter surveillance was the thing that said you had to pay for the total number of tags you had. So if you wound up with 20 tags and didn't have 20 credits, you just plain couldn't use the card at all. This gives you a credit for each tag you have, so now Mars is for Martians plus counter surveillance is a combo that negates the drawback of counter surveillance so that you can get as many tags as you damn well please and access a bajillion cards. But despite how good Siphon is for that, it still isn't enough. We need another enabler for the whole Tag Me plan, and that's where the other Anarch card comes in. And that other card is God of War, which is this thing. So it's a program icebreaker AI virus, 3 influence, 4 to install, 1 MU, 0 strength. When your turn begins, you may take 1 tag to place 2 virus counters on it, hosted virus counter, break a subroutine, and 2 credits plus 1 strength. Okay, so this card sounds super powerful right off the bat, but let's take a second and delve into it a little deeper. Actually, well, first of all, let's prepare ourselves for a month of every other Anarch deck on Netrunner DB being named Kratos, because, But anyway, as far as this card itself is concerned, as just a straight-up icebreaker, it's actually pretty nice until the last part that says 2 credits for strength. That's actually really crappy. And you might think, to make the argument, that because you get free counters to use to break, that it evens out because you're boosting for expensive, but you're breaking for free. But it really, really doesn't. Like, this is 4 credits to break an Enigma, plus the 4 to install, so that's 8 credits to break an Enigma, plus you can't do it the turn you drop it, and then even then you can only break that 1 Enigma, so it's really not that good as a straight-up icebreaker. It's too expensive to buff, even though you're breaking for free. It has to sit out for several turns to build up enough counters that you can actually use it to get through more than like 1 piece of ice. And on top of that, you use virus counters to break it. It is a virus, which means that even once you've built it up, the Corp can completely shut you out of their servers for several turns just by purging virus counters. So this really should not be considered an icebreaker even at all. It's certainly not your primary icebreaker. This basically needs to be thought of and utilized as just kind of a tag dispenser that sits there and occasionally can break ice if you really need it to. But this is a very essential piece to the Tag Me rig because this allows you to get a ridiculous number of tags. You get one every turn, and they can stack with themselves. You can get up to 3 tags a turn, which allows you to get a buttload of money from Mars is for Martians. It allows you to access a bajillion cards with counter surveillance. So this is a major, major enabler for the whole Tag Me playstyle, which also, because this is so good at that, you could make a Tag Me deck that doesn't use Siphon at all, which actually opens up a lot of other things that you could use that influence for. But what I'm thinking is noise, because it should not be overlooked that this is a virus card. So I'm definitely thinking you could make one of those old school Cano whoop-ass noise decks where you win the game by accessing like 20 cards in one run or something like that. Because you just sit here, you put out, all the other viruses you can find, you put out God of War, you sit there and do your noise disruption with your milling, all while building up a giant pile of tags. Then once you've got your 20, 30 tags going, you drop M for M, run on R&D, and you access, most of their entire deck, plus whatever you can manage to get out of archives. So that could be a pretty solid strat, actually. And yeah, using God of War as your primary breaker is a pretty bad thing, but if you're only making 1 or 2 runs, the whole game, that's a lot better. You could slap down a system seizure or use Dean Lister and buff the crap out of it and still get some pretty solid runs in with all your virus tokens to break. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking this is going to end up most in. Like, maybe you could put it like a singleton in a criminal deck and do a crim tag me thing and just snatch it with special order. But I'm definitely thinking like a noise counter surveillance, 20 card dig type of deck. I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of people messing with that after this pack comes out. So, yeah, we finally got the last pieces of the whole Tag Me puzzle, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's still a little bit more support coming, but these are the pieces that we really needed. These are what we really needed to kind of get the meat of the deck, the bones of the strategy assembled. And I think that this is a really interesting, cool thing. Anarchs have always been about, pure Tag Me, I don't give a crap. And I think this is going to be a really fun, really interesting way for the design to take Anarch. So I'm really excited to see what people manage to do with this. All right, so let's look at some Crim cards now. This is this is Flashbang. I don't even want to talk about it. It's Blue Ankuza. It's Blue Ankuza. That's what this is. Oh my god. This belongs with Mass Driver and Ankuza and Persephone and all those other really, really horrible, has a powerful effect but costs such an absurd amount of money you'll never actually use it type of cards. Like, if you want to derez, let's say, an Ichi 1, this is 5 to install, plus you have to boost to 4 strength, then you have to pay 6 to derez. This is 15 credits to derez an Ichi 1. Like, that's The entire point of derezzing is to make the corp have to spend money to res it again, is to drain the corp's economy. If I'm a corp player and I pay 5 to res an Ichi again and you pay 15 to derez it, you're like, go ahead. I don't, stop hitting yourself. Like, what do you want? What do you want me to do? I mean, the art's nice. I like that it's called Flashbang. That's cool. But yeah, this is, I don't know what else to call it. This is Blue and Kuza. Don't play it. Okay, so after that, we've got something a little more interesting. We've got Rip Deal, which is a 3-to-play run event, 1 influence. Make a run on HQ. If successful, when you would access any number of cards from HQ, you may instead add that many cards from your heap to your grip, remove it from the game instead of trashing it. And my sphincter immediately tightens in horror upon seeing 1 influence recursion. But actually, while a lot of people freaked out the moment they saw this, it's actually not that bad at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's recursion in Criminal, and it is 1 influence recursion. That will never not be super strong. But as I stated before, if you're going to give Criminals recursion, it needs to be very, very restricted. And this is actually pretty restricted. So before anything else, I want to talk about the last sentence on the card, which says, remove it from the game instead of trashing it. This is so good and so needed for the game. As with pretty much any card game, recursion is the root of all evil and the source of most of the most hated and most unfun negative play experiences in the game. With the design team having the foresight and the initiative to recognize cards that say, if you spam this, this could break the game and ruin everything, we're going to make it so you literally cannot spam it. It removes itself from the game after playing it. It is literally impossible to spam this. I think that is a really good idea, and that is something that I really, really hope they keep doing. We're already going to see it later on with Mining Accident, but that's next pack. But yeah, I really, really hope that they keep up that trend of recognizing potential super problem cards and just literally cutting off the ability for them to be recurred at all. Like, this is a really good idea, and I'm really glad to see it. But as far as the effect of the actual card itself, yes, you can get back any card you want. If you have HQ multi-access, you can even get back multiple cards, but it shouldn't be ignored how expensive it is to use this. It's 3 to play, and then you have to make a successful HQ run. So, like maybe early game, if you've got a big lead, this could be an issue to bring back siphons or something like that, but if you've got, 2 or 3 pieces of ice in front of HQ in late game, like, sure, you can get back anything, but how much is it going to cost you to do that? Like, what, 10, 15 credits to pay that and get through the server and then get back 1 card? Like, that's, even if it's something really strong like a Siphon or a Parasite or something, like, that's just a huge amount of money to get that 1 card. Now, if you combo it with HQ multi-access, you can get back more than 1 card, and that's great, but you can't combo this with most forms of HQ multi-access after rotation. Until rotation, there's some nonsense you can get away with this, like HQ interface and Nerve Agent. You could combo this with those and do some silly things, but after rotation, which isn't coming not that far from now, most of the things that this is abusable with will go away. So you can't combo this with legwork. You can do it with turning wheel, but that takes a long time to build up. So after rotation, there's actually not much you can really combo this with at all, except maybe like the Gauntlet. So you might see some decks messing around with this and the Gauntlet to try to get HQ recursion out of this. So it's definitely a strong card. It's definitely a good card. I don't think we're going to see a ton of it, especially not after rotation. We'll see a lot of people experimenting with it when there's still broken stuff you can combo it with, but I don't think after rotation that this is going to have nearly as much of a presence. I think we'll still see it here and there, though. So I'm actually pretty happy with this card. I'm definitely happy with the whole self-removal clause. Like, if they had put that on Friends in High Places, that would have made the card still really strong, but nowhere remotely near as much of a problem as it currently is. I what I would do to have that removal clause on Friends in High Places. I would do at least what I would do for like 3 Klondike bars. So please, please R&D, keep doing that. And last but not least for blue, we've got yet another knee-jerkingly horrifying card. This is Leave No Trace. This is another run event. It's 3 influence, it's 2 to play. It says make a run. When the run ends, derez all ice that was rezzed during this run. So let me just do a quick reenactment of the average court player's response to seeing this card. Yeah, that sounds about right. But in all seriousness, this is a super powerful card, and a lot of people are really scared of it. Like, the big concern, the big fear I keep hearing is, this is son of blackmail. Like, sweet Jesus H. tap dancing Christ on a gluten-free cracker. This is blackmail 2.0. Jesus, we thought this was rotating out. Now we got to deal with this crap. And it is going to be used very similarly to blackmail in that this card is exclusively for scoring remotes. Like, that is the 98% of the time, that is what this card is for just dumpstering scoring remotes and making it super obnoxious to try to score behind ice. But if anything, I would sort of call this a fixed blackmail, because it's not an I get in for free go eat a dick card, because that's basically what blackmail is. It's a I get in, nothing you do matters, piss off. That's what blackmail does. Leave no trace. If you have the money to res all that ice, which you would have that money if you were trying to score out behind it, but the point is that if you spend the money to res that ice and keep the runner out, you still keep them out. Right? If you have the money to res that ice and score that agenda, you still have it. You just very, very likely won't have the money to score another agenda after that. So what Leave No Trace is, it's not an I get in for free card, it's a very, very powerful tempo card. That's what Leave No Trace is. This is an extremely powerful tempo warping card. Like, the court has to make a very important decision about how comfortable they are in their board state. Because if they res everything and it just gets undone, how badly do you want that agenda? Are you willing to kneecap your own tempo in order to get this one agenda scored? Now, obviously, if you're on game point, this thing's blank, whereas that's a huge distinction. Blackmail on game point is just as threatening as it ever was. This on game point means nothing. The other thing is that if you're running a rushy type deck, or some kind of like tempting bait never advance strategy or fast advance, this doesn't do anything. This is useful when you have built up a big beefy scoring remote and the runner has bided their time waiting for their moment to strike. If the runner is constantly running at your scoring remote because you're throwing shit behind it, because you're like tempting them to come run it with some never advance thing, or even if you just have like crappy little gear check ice like vanillas and enigmas and things like that, this isn't nearly as effective. In the right type of deck and the right type of strategy where you build up your board state and you wait for your moment to jump in and stab the corp in the back and swing the tempo of the game in your favor, this is absolutely perfect for that type of deck. And of course, I am talking about Leela. This is an amazing Leela card. This is such an incredibly, amazingly good Leela card that she snuggles it in bed with her at night like a big giant teddy bear and whispers sweet nothings into its ear. And I am so pumped to use it in Leela, because Leela is literally my #1 favorite runner identity. Outside of that, I could see it in Geist. But besides that, I'm actually seeing kind of a drop-off using it in other crims. Well, you could probably fit it in Los. I'm not seeing a lot of use for it outside of Crim because of the 3 influence, but definitely Leela and Geist and maybe Los could definitely get some really good use out of this. And it is super powerful, don't get me wrong. This card can absolutely turn a game on its head, but it's not Blackmail 2.0. Okay, it kind of sounds like it. I've heard a lot of people freak out about that, but the sky is not falling. It is not Blackmail 2.0. Okay, calm down. All right, after going on for quite some time on Anarch and Criminal, there's a lot less to talk about for Shaper this time around. We've got 3 really iffy cards, but let's see what we got here. First up is a run event, Lean and Mean. It's a 1 influence, 2 to play. Make a run if you have 3 or fewer programs installed. All icebreakers have +2 strength during this run. So this is basically a Shaper version of Push the Envelope. It's super similar to that card. All your icebreakers get +2 strength for 1 run as long as you fulfill X condition. And it's similarly bad. Like, even if you build a deck where you have that condition fulfilled, it's just inferior to just having an econ card. Like, it really is. That's the problem with most of the temporary boost cards. Unless you can get an extremely high value out of them, then they're just inferior to having an econ card. So I mean, I would much rather play System Seizure over this, or Dean Lister. So it's a Shaper Push the Envelope, and it's a little bit better, but still not very good. So yeah, not much going on here. After that, we've got Maven. This is a new Shaper AI. It's 3 influence, 2 MU, 5 to install, 0 strength. So those are some pretty lousy numbers. It has +1 strength for each installed program and 2 credits break ice subroutine. So this is actually kind of interesting. It's definitely a Shaper-styled card because it's an AI that gets stronger the more programs you have out, and Shapers love to fix problems by installing programs. In the right deck, you could definitely get this to super high strength, especially with cheap little 0 to install, 0 MU programs like Shahrazad. I could definitely see people trying to run this in a Haley deck with E3 feedback implants. That's definitely something that could be done. The big problems I see with it, though, are besides needing all the programs to install and all the extra MU to install those programs, is that we just got done getting a whole bunch of Shaper cards that reward you for having a bunch of unused MU. So this is like a card that rewards you for having a bunch of MU and filling it all, but it's so much easier just to play the version where you have a bunch of that same pile of MU and just only install 1 or 2 programs. So using this, you lose deep data mining, you lose, having simplicity and consistency in your deck. Plus, there's the fact that after E3 rotates out, the 2 to break hurts a lot. So, maybe I'll see some people futzing around with it in Haley decks before rotation, but after rotation, you're not going to see this anywhere. And last up for green, we've got, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Nanokt, Nanoo, I don't know. This is a new Shaper killer. It's 1 influence, it's 1 strength, 4 to install, 1 MU, and it says during each run, it has +1 strength for each piece of ice protecting the attacked server, 1 credit, break a sub, and 3 credits +2 strength. And this one actually is not that bad. In fact, it's clearly the best of these 3, but outside of stealth, this might actually be Shaper's best killer that they've gotten. In fact, it probably is. So it might actually be not that bad, because the +1 strength for each piece of ice effect is pretty nice. It feels kind of like Berserker, except that it has one thing that Berserker doesn't have, and that's the ability to pay to boost its strength. Now, the ratio is not great, but you can do it if you have to. And actually, once there's once there's 3 pieces of ice on a server, and you hit that magical 4 strength that you can get through an each one, there's actually not much that you have to pay to boost this for at all. Like, there really isn't. Like, 4 strength is... Exceeding 4 strength is pretty rare for a sentry, and exceeding 5 is even harder. So, once this you have 3 pieces of ice on a server, there's not very often that you'd have to boost this. So that could actually be pretty nice. I mean, it's matchup dependent, of course. If they don't have a lot of ice on that server, this is substantially worse, but Shaper does excel at camping scoring remotes and digging into R&D, so those are servers that will have lots of ice on them. So I think this might be a surprisingly underrated card. So I mean, I'm not placing any bets yet, but if you don't want to spend influence on a breaker and you're not running dagger, then this might be a surprisingly solid option. So I wouldn't count this one out. I'm actually kind of interested to see where this goes. And last on the list for runner cards, we have... I want it. This is Blue Moose. It's an amazing card that does fantastic things, and you should totally play it. It is a neutral, 0 influence resource. It is unique. It's 4 to install. And it says when your turn begins, you may remove 1 card in the heap from the game. If you do, gain 2 credits. And I am calling it right now, this is straight up the new Caddy Jones. Like, it just is. It is a neutral, no influence card. It's a resource, and it gets the runner a large amount of money over a long period of time. So once Caddy rotates out, this is... I will absolutely put money on this being her replacement, and Blue Moose is really, really freaking good. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it's significantly better than Caddy Jones, because it doesn't have a click investment. You just put it down once, then all the money is passive. So, like, there's so many things that this card works with. Like, literally anything that you're not planning on constantly recurring, you just feed the Blue Moose and it becomes 2 credits. Like, just, it makes your... Sure Gambles give you 2 more credits, kind of like playing Prepaid Voice Pad does. It makes your Dirty Laundries effectively free. It makes your inside jobs effectively free. It makes your daily casts give you 2 more credits. It makes your special orders effectively gain you a credit instead of costing you 1. It's fantastic with career fare, because you career fare it out for 1 credit, then you just use it on the career fare. Your diesels get you 2 extra credits. Your I've had worse gain you a credit. Your self-modifying codes effectively don't cost the 2 extra credits to tutor something. Like, I feel like I'm a used car salesman in an infomercial here, because it just does everything. It slices, it dices, it perms, it conditions, it makes julienne fries, it'll balance your taxes. It's so good. Any card in your deck that you're not planning on constantly recurring just says, and gains you 2 credits in the corner. Extra copies of your console that you don't need, gain 2 credits. Other copies of Blue Moose, toss them, gain 2 credits. It's just freaking ridiculous. Like, this card is so good, it's going to be in so many decks. This is a new staple econ card for the game. It really is. Obviously, I really, really like it. I think it might be slightly worse in Anarch, because Anarch has the most things they plan on recurring. But even then, it's really easy to make an Anarch deck work with this. Like, it is very, very easy to get like a good 20 or even 30 credits out of this over a course of the game. This is a really freaking good card. This is just sexy. Sexy like Batman's ass. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to leave that up there. Look at it. And on to the Corp cards. Up first for HB, we've got O2 shortage, oxygen. Am I supposed to say O2 or am I just supposed to say oxygen? I'm really not sure. But it is a 3-to-play operation. It's 2 influence, and it says the runner may trash a card from their grip at random. If they do not, gain 2 clicks. So this is like some weird offshoot of Biotic Labor. It's 1 credit less than Biotic Labor. It sounds nice at first, but the big issue is that the decision of what happens is in your opponent's hands. So whichever thing you want, it really the opponent gets to make you not get that thing. Like if you're threatening fast advance, they'll just take the damage. So if you want damage, there's easier ways to get damage, like Neural EMP. If you want that fast advance, you need to get the fast advance, so pay the 1 extra credit for Biotic Labor. If you're trying to splash this out of faction for a cheaper Biotic Labor, then the runner can just take 1 damage and your fast advance plan doesn't work. So it's kind of interesting at first, but don't underestimate the fact that you put the decision in your opponent's hands, that your plan falls through most of the time. So it's a fun card, but it's nowhere near as good as it at first sounds. So after that, we've got Helheim Servers, which is a unique upgrade. It's 2 to res, it's 3 to trash, and it's 1 influence, which immediately makes me hope that it's not good because I'm sick of HB asset spam. But this one I'm actually okay with this. It's trash 1 card from HQ. All ice protecting this server has +2 strength until the end of the run. Use this ability only during a run on this server. So I'm actually kind of interested in this card. It definitely fills the same type of design space as Corporate Troubleshooter, but instead of paying credits, you're paying cards out of your hand, which is very arguable, which is more important, but that's very situational, depends on the deck that you're in and what's going on at the moment. It does have the same issue as Corporate Troubleshooter, where you're mostly going to use it to boost 1 piece of ice to be so huge that the runner has to eat whatever it does. Because if you're just using it as like a generic, make this server slightly more expensive to get into kind of thing, it's not that great. The best way to use it is to wait until the runner gets to a really dangerous piece of ice and dump all your hand or resources or whatever into making sure they have to eat the entire effects of that ice. So something like a Janus 1.0 or Chiashi or a Archer, something like that. Something that really, really changes the course of the game if the runner has to face check it. And I honestly don't think I'll see this very much in HB at all, but at 1 influence, I could definitely see this showing up in a Jinteki deck, because how would you like to discard 2 shocks and an Obokata Protocol to make the runner eat your Chiashi, you know? Like, that's really, really friggin' nice. Although that does, of course, mean someone will probably use this to try to make an obnoxious IG deck that everyone will hate. So, yeah, we'll see where this goes. But I don't know. It's a cute little card. I kind of like it. So Jinteki this time around kind of got the short end of the stick. We got 3 cards, but none of them are particularly good. But we did just get Obokata Protocol, so, like, I'll get over it. But right here we've got 2 agendas and a piece of ice. Agenda number 1 is Mandatory Seed Replacement. It's a 4/2, and it says when you score it, you can rearrange any number of ice protecting all servers. And the real question is, when would you actually want to do that, and how would you rearrange it? Because if you rearrange ice in a way that, like, you just move ice around because the threat is on a different server than you thought or something like that, then that's a failure on your part to just not put ice in the right place. So rather than getting a card that fixes your mistake, just learn to play better, because that's a really, really core part of playing Corpse, is knowing where to put your ice. The one time I can see this actually being useful is maybe in some weird situation late game where you score it and then you just, like, shove all your ice onto 1 server. That could be something. Like, if you're maybe in some kind of 10 and fast advance, you just don't want them to hit things out of your R&D and R&D lock you can just shove, like, 6 pieces of ice onto R&D or something like that, or just dump all your ice onto your scoring remote. I mean, that could be what it's good useful for, is to dump most if not all of your ice into 1 place. But then again, like, there's so many other 4/2s that this competes with that, like, I don't see a lot of use for this out of some weird jank decks. Then we've got a 3-1 Water Monopoly. It says the install cost of each non-virtual resource is increased by 1. So technically the existence of this card does make Apex like 1/1000% better. But I do kind of like the effect. It's not worth it. Like, it really isn't. It's a agenda. You have to score it. The effect is relatively weak. It only affects after you score this. You can combo it with Scarcity of Resources, but I'd rather just play Scarcity of Resources and play any other 3. Like, this competes with House of Knives. I would so much rather put House of Knives over this. I love House of Knives, but yeah, this is a filler agenda. And then we've got the Piece of Ice. This is Metamorph. It's 3 influence. It's 3 to res. It's a 4 strength code gate. And there's one subroutine that says swap 2 other installed pieces of ice or 2 of your installed non-ice cards. And this pretty much has the same problem with it as Seed Replacement, where as far as swapping installed pieces of ice go, like, just learn to place your ice better, really. And as far as swapping 2 of your installed non-ice cards, when is that really going to be relevant? First of all, this has to fire, and then you have to have a reasonable, relevant thing to do with that effect. And even me as a Jinteki main, there's very, very few scenarios I can think of where I would even remotely want this effect for anything. Like, if you want to rearrange your board just to mess with your opponent or mind game them, that's nifty, but we already have replanting. And replanting does the same type of effect way, way, way better. So, like, if you want to go with this type of thing that Metamorph does, like, literally just play replanting. Like, put in a better piece of ice and just play replanting to use that effect to much, much better, effect. So, yeah, the Jinteki cards this time around are not very good. And now we get to the NBN cards, and I really don't like NBN. I don't. I hate NBN. I really, seriously do. I hate NBN. I hate the color yellow. I hate playing against it. I hate the news. I hate it right in its big, fat, dumb face. I really do. And I am so glad to have the fresh air of being out from under the extremely oppressive dominance that NBN had over the past good while. But even I have to admit that this cycle has been really subpar for NBN. Like, it has not been kind to them. But at least this pack does give them one playable card. And that card is this here, Biased Reporting. It's a 3 influence, 2 to play operation. Choose a resource, hardware, or program. The runner may trash any of his or her installed cards of that type and gain 1 credit for each card trashed. Then you gain 2 credits for each installed card of the chosen type. So just to clarify here, so let's say the runner has 5 resources installed and you pick resource. The runner has the opportunity to blow up any number of their own resources and the runner gains 1 credit for each thing they blow up. Then you gain 2 credits for each one that's left. And this, I feel, is like the replacement for Sweeps Week, which a lot of people will probably think sounds really weird. But while Sweeps Week was a really reliable early game burst econ card, this is a pretty reliable late game econ card, because the more board state the runner has, the more money you get off of it, and the chances that the runner will just trash an enormous chunk of their own board state to stop you from getting money is pretty unusual. So it shouldn't be real hard late game to get like a good, 6 to 8 credit boost out of this. So that's pretty solid. And against certain matchups, just like how Sweeps Week was ridiculously good against Andromeda, and like imagine Biased Reporting against Haley. Like, for real. Like at my last game night, I looked, there was a Haley playing next to me, and I sat there and counted them, and like, yeah, if that person had Biased Reporting, they would have gained like 14 credits off of it. Yeah, I think this is like an inverse sort of replacement for Sweeps Week, but it's definitely a good card. I wouldn't put like 3 of it in a deck, but I could definitely see a solid 2. Yeah, I think this is like the one good NBN card they've had for the past couple of packs. The other NBN card in the deck is a really lousy piece of overcosted ice. It's Data Loop, it's 2 influence, it's a barrier, it's 7 to res, it's 4 strength. It has end the run if the runner is tagged, then regular end the run, and when the runner encounters it, they must add 2 cards from their hand back on the top of their deck. So this is like Eli 1.0 if it costed more than twice as much. One of its subroutines was situational, but it has a annoying effect. When you run into it, is that worth it? Jury says no. Let's move on. Alright, now on to the continuing saga of the Rise of Wayland. Here we have a 1 to res, 3 to trash asset. This is Open Forum. It is 1 influence, and it says after your mandatory draw, reveal the top card of R&D and add it to HQ. Add 1 card from HQ to the top of R&D. And this is an awkward little card. At first glance, it seems like a kind of nifty little draw filtering mechanism, where you reveal information, but then you get to draw extra cards. And at first glance, like in a rushy type strategy, that would probably be pretty good, but you have to take into account here that you have to put a card from your hand back on top of your deck. So what that means is like the first turn that it procs, you get an extra draw, but you have to put 1 thing back, but you still get that extra draw. But then every turn after that, you're not getting anything extra because your mandatory draw will pick you back up the card that you put on top of your deck, and then the extra draw that Open Forum gets you will get you the same thing you would have normally drawn anyway. So it really only has a tangible effect on the first turn that it goes off. After that, you're just revealing cards to your opponent with no real benefit at all unless you're spending clicks to draw cards. But if you're spending clicks to draw cards because of this, why not just replace this with a different card that draws you cards? I mean, I could still maybe see it in like a super fast rushy deck, just because you'll probably be clicking to draw cards a lot anyway, so you can rush out as fast as possible. But it kind of shoots itself in the foot, which maybe is kind of the flavor point, that people are just arguing with each other, going in circles, and you're not really making any progress, 1 step forward, 1 step back kind of thing. So flavor, if that's the point flavor-wise, then yeah, it gets that. But I thought it was okay at first, but not so much. Okay, so what do we got next? Next we've got... My God. It's finally happened. I told you all the legends were true. And now, just like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, after years of only having sketchy, blurry photographs taken by crazy people, we finally have proof, we finally have irrefutable evidence that Typhonium is a card. I told you all it was real. Who's the crazy one now? Good Wayland ice does exist. For real though, this thing is pretty snazzy and I like it a lot. So this is Typhonium, which is 2 influence, it's a barrier, it's 9 to res, it's 5 strength. It cannot have cards hosted on it. You can forfeit an agenda to res it instead of paying its res cost, and it has 3 subs that are Trash a Program, and Trash a Resource and End the Run. So I think right off the bat, the obvious comparison is with Wayland's other signature sack an agenda to res this ice, which is Archer. So Typhonium is basically a barrier version of Archer, but there are some very, very key differences separating the two. First of all, let's be real here. That middle sentence, Typhonium cannot host cards, that reads, this can't be parasited. Like let's all be honest, that's what that means. You can't parasite this, which is pretty relevant, especially if you did sack the agenda to res it. So it is immune to a major weakness of Archer, so that's really cool. It is incredibly dangerous to face check, just like Archer. In fact, I would actually say that Typhonium is even more punishing to face plant into than Archer is, because they both trash 2 programs, and they both end the run. But whereas Archer will gain the Corp 2 credits, this also trashes a resource, and blowing up a resource is way more important than gaining 2 credits. So this is one of the most punishing ice to face plant into in the entire game. This is even more dangerous than Archer, and that is saying a lot. So just the fact that a Wayland deck can put this in their deck means that they have a significant amount of threat. If they're sitting on 9 credits and the runner doesn't have their Fractor out, there is some level of inherent threat that it could be a Typhonium. Just like if you don't have your Sentry Breaker out and Jinteki has 5 credits, it could be a Koma Inu. This is that kind of threat. Plus, at 2 influence, a surprise Typhonium in a deck could be really freaking nasty. The other issue, though, is that while it is way more expensive to res credit-wise, Archer requires you to pay 4 credits and sack an agenda. Typhonium has a major difference here where you don't have to sack an agenda. It's really expensive, but you don't have to. You can just straight up pay the 9. And for what this card is, 9 credits is not a terrible price. Well, except for the fact that it is a barrier, the third point. This is a barrier and Archer is a sentry. Sentry breakers are typically way less efficient than barrier breakers. So Paperclip gets through this for a measly 4 credits, and that feels really crappy unless you sacked like a 0-point standoff to it. Corroder gets through this for 6, which is still not bad if you put this on a central. Whereas by comparison, if you try to break Archer with like a Mongoose, that's 8 credits. So yeah, I would say the big comparison, bottom line, TLDR between Typhonium versus Archer is that Typhonium is A, easier or at least more reliable to res, B, easier to break than Archer, but C is even more face check punishing. So take those as you will. I'm not sure if it would be a good idea for a deck to have Typhonium and Archer. It might be best to just pick one of the two or do like maybe a singleton of each and test them out. But Typhonium definitely can have a major impact on the game. Like I said, if they slam into this early game and aren't prepared for it, this, just like Archer, this can end a game. This ice can absolutely single-handedly decide a game. So I am very interested to see what people do with this. I'm very interested to see where people splash this into. And this is the kind of card that single-handedly gives the entire faction of Wayland a lot of threat in the early game when the runner hasn't figured out what's going on yet. Because if you're, like I said, you're sitting on 9 credits, you don't have their Fractor out, this is an inherent amount of threat. So I really like Typhonium. It's a really interesting kind of revision of the whole Archer archetype, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff people can do with it. So yeah, this will absolutely take over some games by surprise. And after that, we have a much less interesting card. It says Transparency Initiative. It's a 0-cost operation. It's 4 influence. Turn an agenda face up and install Transparency Initiative on that agenda as a hosted condition counter with the text, host agenda gains public. Whenever you advance host agenda, gain a credit. So the ironic thing about this card is that it's only even remotely usable on agendas that are already public, because all this does is negate the cost to advance the card, which if it's a regular agenda, you just advance it and score it anyway. So the only way this is relevant is if you plan on advancing it a ton of times, because advancing it gets you stuff, which means it's one of the public agendas anyway. Or I guess maybe like a Project Beal. But that's rotating anyway. So, yeah, but you do save the money from advancing it a bajillion times, but then again, this is also, you also have to spend a click in a card to put this on it, so why not just use that click in a card for any other generic econ card? So it's just, like, it's really just not worth it. Like, this doesn't deserve to be 4 influence, so, yeah. And bringing up the rear of the pack, we've got this adorable little puppy. Aw, he's so cute. Look at him. He's so cute. This is Rover Algorithm. It's a 2-cost, 0-influence neutral operation. It says install it on a rezzed piece of ice as a condition counter with the text host ice has +1 strength for each power counter on it. Whenever the runner passes the host ice, place a power counter on it. So this is one of those fun little cards that I do actually kind of like, but I don't think anyone's actually going to use it. It is definitely one of the better hosted condition counter cards, because like you do something like sub boost that adds a subtype and makes it more breakable and just adds one more credit to break it for +1 sub. This makes that ice bigger and meaner and harder to get through every time they pass through it. So in the right matchup, if someone has like a medium or keyhole deck or something like that, where they're hammering R&D over and over again, then yeah, this will definitely do some work. But outside of some specific scenarios, it's an okay card, but it's not that great. I do kind of like it, but I don't actually think it's going to see a lot of play. And that was Free Mars, and honestly, I really like this pack. There's a lot of really cool and interesting stuff in it. There's some really nice gems here and there, and even the stuff that's not that good has some interesting flavor to it. Oh, sorry, that's my ride. Gotta go. Thank you and good night.